Hi, Chitra. Good morning.
Good morning, Aditi.
Good morning, Chitra. Archana is going to join 10 minutes later.
Yeah.
So, do you have any questions or something that I could answer for you in the meantime? Any difficulties?
Uh, no, with the pencil sketching, not really, because since, as I was telling you, I think in the beginning when I joined the class or before joining the class, that's something that I've been doing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, although I've not learned, uh, I just sketch whatever I see when I travel and so on.
Okay.
Uh, so whatever you've been teaching us here has been really useful because it's given me tips that I didn't know before.
Okay.
But I'm finding it easy to follow that.
Okay. All right.
Not so with the watercolors because that's something which I've never ever
Huh.
done. And that's something where, yeah, I mean, I suppose one of the things is that it's just a matter of practicing. But if there's something else I should know, I think last time I asked you what was, what were the things that one should not do rather than,
Hmm.
yeah. So I don't know if there's anything more that you can tell me.
No, so with watercolor, it actually lands up being just the amount of practice that you do.
Huh.
But since you joined last month, right? We've hardly had any
April, yeah,
watercolor practice. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So next month we're doing native arts and things like that. So that will
Mhm.
require a certain amount of watercolor. Um, so yeah, it's just over time how you use it for different topics that changes. Like for example, if you use when we use watercolor for landscape, it's slightly different from how we use it for florals or for food. So there is a little bit of modification of how we apply watercolor also. And then
Mm-hmm.
through doing 4 or 5 months of these different subjects, then you start getting a handle on how watercolor behaves. But
Right.
the uh, don't do's are pretty much the same. You don't go
Mm.
back and forth like crayons or pencil. You don't uh, waiting between layers is important. That is, I think, one of the biggest things. Most people, me included, we may have the patience to finish art. That is considered as one kind of patience. But the other part is while you're painting, there is a flow which you need to maintain. And one part that includes a little bit of patience and waiting between layers and responding to how the color is drying or whether it remains wet or damp, and there are differences in dampness with which you need to work. So as you get more and more familiar with watercolor, you will know exactly at what point in that drawing you need to insert the new layer of color, or do you want them to merge? Do you want to create an effect because of the merging of the colors? All of that becomes like a
Mm.
next level. So the people who are really good at or the watercolor that we see of people which is really advanced, they go through this process in a very interesting way. You'll see some really nice deep colors and some watery washes, and then you'll see these color merges which are very unusual, which create clouds or which create these channels, which that itself adds texture to whatever they're doing. So that starts becoming very sublime, that kind of art. So
Yeah.
my tip is to While I have stated what the don'ts are, do not reject anything that happens on the paper, because the approach that we must take when when we encounter anything unfamiliar is almost like you're in a lab and you're testing. So, like in school, when you went to a chem lab, the whole idea of doing lab was to understand how a lab functions. They
Right.
didn't really care, I think, whether your sulfuric acid or sulfur smelt like sulfur or not.
Right.
But it's the process of observation, inference that you need to bring to even this. So, what I've noticed is very often people decide on the end result before practicing. When
Mm.
you're unfamiliar with any medium, there's no point in deciding on an outcome and
Right.
approaching the medium with certain expectations and certain definite expectations, because the medium is capable of a whole lot of stuff. It is how whether we are capable of using the medium in its entire range, that is unsure. So often people tend to reject the medium when they see something is not going right, but they don't examine what their actions have been.
Right.
In that, you sometimes lose this connection. So, if you say, for example, if you're trying to make a painting in which one of these several things happens, one is while you're painting, the color is very bright, but then after you finish painting, the color looks faded. That
Mm.
happens frequently. Second is while you're applying the paint, it's not being applied evenly. That happens because then you see patches. Thirdly, in the application, sometimes you want to do a wet on wet application, but in some places it merges well, in some places it is patchy, in some places there's a ring around your patch, and all of it generally just looks like a very shoddy job. So, in all of these cases, there are different things that are happening. In the first case, the nature of watercolor is that you have to layer it. And
Yes.
unless you are told that, or unless you follow a tutorial which requires you to layer it, you never realize that watercolor in its translucency as a single layer can be a very dull medium. It really doesn't do much. You should be you should be layering it between 5 and 10 times on top of it. The second one, where you have patchy application, that's two things going wrong. You don't have the right consistency of paint. And then again, right consistency is a big range. You can have very wet paint with a lot of medium or very little medium, depending upon the shade you want finally on paper. And the second thing is the size of brush. A lot of times people use any brush for any area, and that is never going to work. It's like trying to clean your house with a toothbrush. You
Mm.
will take longer and
Mm.
the results may vary. But if you have a larger brush, then you have more medium that it can store, and then even moving across larger areas faster makes it possible for you to even out the color. The third one is where you have a large area where you want to insert paint, and in some places it works fine, in some places it dries, in some places it creates a ring. In that case, usually again the problem is understanding consistency of paint, and in order for you to be able to keep the paint damp, new old painted area damp enough for the new paint to merge with it, you need to again in that there are several factors. Sometimes just sitting under a fan may be the problem. So you just switch off the fan and your medium dries a little slower. Suppose your medium just dries anyway. You don't do the merge. You wait, let one layer dry completely, apply a second layer. This time the paint stays wet longer, and then you insert. So the what I try to do is give you all these factors that there is paint consistency, brush size, temperature, time, then how much pigment, how much water. Once you know what questions to ask, you don't ask what went wrong. You just start asking, okay, what happened with consistency here? What happened with my brush usage over here? Because it's more important to know that whatever you did is going to be useful somewhere.
Right, of course.
So if you reject it, you then say the next time you want to make a wooded texture on the bark of a tree and you want patchy, you forget what happened. And then by that time you worked so hard on making a nice even texture that no matter what you do, that bloody bark just becomes
Right,
smooth and it's very frustrating then. So just be observant about these things.
right,
If you find an effect on paper that is reminiscent of a texture that you could use it for, note it down.
right,
So then embed that memory as an observation. That
right.
works in that process I found is something very is unusual. At least now keep riling on, not riling, riding the Indian education system is where they set the expectation in the beginning rather than allowing us to enjoy the process. And we have learned to become that kind of educator for ourselves. So if you want to make a watercolor painting, it has to be like a high quality, international watercolor competition style watercolor. Otherwise, our life is worthless. So our stakes are so high.
Yeah,
And I've seen that in all of us, me included, that if we do not get the result like they have shown or we have pegged for ourselves, we just reject the medium altogether. That is such a shame
yeah, it
because
is.
it's not the fault of the medium ever.
I'm so glad that I worked in such very different kinds of school that, you know, we always told the children that mistakes are good.
Mm,
Don't judge yourself just because you made a mistake, and don't expect to be perfect the first time.
mm,
It's unnatural. So just live with it and look at what you did rather than, you
yeah,
know. Yeah, I know.
very true.
I I tried several of the other eyes in the last week.
Okay,
I'll just take a picture and put it.
yeah. And I'm just going to share some images for this week.
Yeah.
Just give me 2 minutes. Archana, are you here?
Yeah, Aditi, I'm here.
Okay, okay, fine. Just give me a couple of minutes. So last week, did we also do? Yeah, we have to do the nose and mouth today also. Ah, very nice. Chitra, now when you are labeling your art, now
Yeah.
find a way to label that also with more creative lettering.
Okay.
And
Sure.
definitely don't underline your title.
Yeah, okay.
And this is school app.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did discover while trying these eyes out that uh, for the eyebrows and the eyelashes, it was actually worth the effort to try and do each one consciously
Yeah.
rather than, just doing this, which we used to do before. And also what you had remarked earlier, that the beginning of the line was like rather prominent, and therefore what I did was I kind of imagined myself starting the eyelash somewhere just above the paper and brought the pencil down as it
Right.
was in its curve, and that seemed to take away that
Yes.
dot at the beginning that was happening before.
Yeah. So I often look at it as a pendulous movement. Your
Yes.
pencil must move like that. So then you can start making
Indeed.
those lines with much more ease.
Yeah.
Okay. So today we'll do nose and mouth. I have shared some images and I'll just make a sketch of that first. I'll just demonstrate and then you can follow me. The first three pictures are portraits, which we'll come to later. And the next three are these three we'll tackle them in a bit. But we'll first just practice the nose and mouth combination. We can practice these in isolation also, just noses, just mouths. That's also good. And sometimes a combination of features is also good. So I want to practice that today. So since this is going to be a practice session like we did for the eyes, I want you to practice with a very loose line. That I think is more important than getting the lines accurately. And I'll demonstrate how that works. So we'll start off with, we can start off with this mouth, the last one, last nose and mouth, because an open mouth is as much of a challenge as the ones that are closed. They are all in different, looking in different directions. So you have looking left, looking left, looking in the front, closed mouth, open mouth, smiling, and then looking right. Closed mouth, open mouth. Okay, so these are different variations which we can practice. I'll just show you this one right now, but essentially it's the same that we do for everything. Now, what I'm looking at, I'd just like to share that first. Look at shapes within this also. So you have certain shapes. Because with basic shapes, you start getting proportions, you start getting distances. Look for, lines and orientation. Even if it is, say, the straight line between two edges of the mouth are, this is 90 degrees and this is, it's a 0 degrees and this could be -2. It is important to see that. And then looking at the relative distance of the upper lip and teeth versus the lower lip. All this, we have to learn to be able to see it like that. Angles of the mouth. It's all here. So either we can draw it as straight lines or we can draw it as just a sketch. Let me just share this with you. Okay. Right. So now I've shared the image with you, so you get an idea of what I am sketching also. Now, as I keep saying, we need to make our illustrations with a very sketchy, free flowing line. So, Archana, don't make your hesitant line like that. That's not what we want. Okay. And by now,
Okay.
by now you should be making lines like this. And keep moving your pencil to, so it should look like one of those very fidgety kids now who can't sit still. That is how your pencil should be. And have multiple lines built in this space. It should look like a nice smooth flow of lines. When we do this, we start finding lots of meaningful lines from where we can take up the sketch. And this is also the reason why you don't erase these lines. It's after all going to be a practice sketch. So you build up on this. And let all the sketchy lines remain. They are part of the sketch. When you're marking areas, freely mark these spaces. So the edge of the nose on the side is over here, but the lips go beyond. So mark this out, mark this angle. Every place there's a highlight, like just at the rim of the lips, keep the highlight. Try to give yourself a light and dark texture for where the mouth, where the lip glows. There's a glossy finish there. And as far as the teeth are concerned, do not make the line between the teeth. So when you are drawing the teeth, draw just the edge of line of teeth. And with each shape that you draw, let that be a stepping stone for the next line or shape that you need to make. Since now we're doing this at color, every shade, sorry, not color, which is pencil, every shade that you make has a meaning. So if you are making the inside of the mouth, notice that it's not fully dark. The edges are fairly dark and the inside is slightly lighter, but not as light as the mouth. And then you have a dark edge here, but it's not as dark as the inside. So we have to tell the same story as the color picture, but with just black and white. Now you'll also notice after you have shaded the mouth that the teeth look like there's something wrong with them. That's because the teeth also need a little bit of shadow and highlight. So just the lightest shade that you can make for the teeth from the inside teeth to the outside. You may or may not get the highlight, but at least a little bit of shadow on the teeth is usually good, more natural, and the gap between teeth can be indicated with just this edge, just at the bottom edge. Because then otherwise it just looks like one flat chiclet. Archana, when you're drawing this, tell me something. Can you sit? Don't worry about the camera. Can you sit with your book like this, and you're seeing the reference image on the screen?
Yeah.
All right. So I don't want you to keep your book flat and your screen is at 90 degrees. If this is happening, I can see that there is a loss of information. Try
Okay.
and keep your book in the same plane so that you can keep checking between your screen and your book. You've got a few shapes right, but look at the positioning. And that can happen when you keep moving your head top to bottom, as in upright and then down, and upright and down, that you lose yourself on white paper. You don't know where the starting point is. So take on the next one. We can take on this sketch here. Sorry, this model. But this time I want you to sit back in your chair, hold your book at 90 degrees. Yeah, and keep looking. Your eyes should make the minimal movement up and down to see what is being drawn. And I don't need to see your sketch. So don't try to adjust that. I want you to be able to see your sketch in such a way that you're looking at it as perpendicular as possible. So like this, you need to look at it perpendicular. Over here, you're looking at it from an angle. So your angle is going to be like this, but you need to keep it perpendicular. Okay?
Okay.
All right, let's start this next one.
Aditi,
May I
will you
start?
look at this?
Let's check.
Is there enough light on it for you to see?
A little, not adequate. Now I can see it slightly better. Okay, this could be the same thing, Chitra. Are you looking at your artwork on this the reference image? Are you looking at it on screen?
No, I'm looking at it next to me, next to my notebook on the table from
All
my
right.
phone.
So you should try to keep the distance traveled between you and the your illustration as little as possible. Yeah.
Okay.
So now just evaluate and see what could have shifted where.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You don't have to shift it right now. Try it now for the next one though. Just see if you can consciously make some changes or they are happening automatically also. Both work.
Okay. So we try the face of the man next.
Yeah, we'll try the male face now. That is looking in the opposite direction with the mouth closed. Start again with the basic shape and mark your positions of the next features with respect to that basic shape. So you can see the nostril on the further side. Then you see the tip of the nose a little higher. You don't really see the nostril on this side, but I would make it any case. And then based on that, the side of the nose. Drop straight lines so that you know where these lines go, how far they go. When you change the profile, the side profile of a face, there are a few dramatic changes that happen, and we don't really notice them until we start making the sketches. Like, for example, the distance or the position of certain parts, like you may have, we think of the lips being in the same line, but one part of the lip ends slightly higher or lower. The part that's on our side will appear slightly higher than over here. So this is a common mistake that happens. We think of this as all in one plane, and we try to make the shape like this. This makes the image flat. And also, there we also try to make this on the edge of the lips. This is often the case. The distance over here is a problem. So this flatness is a problem. And this point where the lips meet, how it normally is, as is very evident over here, is that you have the nose. This comes in slightly lower or higher, depending upon which angle the picture is being chosen. Now, as far as the mouth is concerned, you have the opening of the mouth, and the lip, the upper lip, curls up over here, and the lower lip starts a little lower, a little inside. So the lip over here curves. Now, even when we do eyes, the same thing occurs, not to a great extent, but you see the inside of the upper lid or the corner of the eye on the other side as well. And the pupil also becomes slightly oval. And if we don't make this change, then our eye will look straight, but the face, the nose, and the mouth will look sideways. Everything shifts a little bit. Your eyebrow shifts a little bit. That's how you get the side profile face. So these things have to be observed. Look at these edges, be very careful about where your line begins, and don't allow your brain to supply information where it's not needed. It can rest over here. Now, in order to make the mouth or the face look more masculine, if I do this, it's instantly going to look very feminine. The edges should not be very sharp over here. It's a very subtle effect. And the lips at the bottom, you also have a shadow under the lip section. So add that little feature. Here we've not added that. There wasn't much anyway, but we haven't added that. But in the second reference image, it's quite dark underneath the chin. So these few things over here will slowly stop making it look like a female face. And of course, we have the stubble, but we don't need to rely on the stubble. We shouldn't really, to make it look masculine. The whole the shading over here is not just meant for the lips to make them distinct. We need to make the shading all over so that even the skin color becomes dark. It's all a play of light and dark, right? So if we don't get the shape accurately, we'll end up making our face look like a woman's lips with a stubble. That's even worse.
Mhm.
Now here is where things will merge. Like, for example, the corner of the mouth, the shade will creep into the skin. The distinct line over here starts becoming slightly less distinct. You have this shadow underneath the nose, and then, of course, shading of the nose also. Now, here's one tip. My pencil now has become fairly blunt. But when we want to do shading of this nature, it's advisable to really sharpen your pencil to a very narrow point. I'm just going to do that and come back and I'll show you how it looks. Okay, so here's the sharpened pencil. And this is because I don't have a clutch pencil here. But this allows you to really see your work and from a distance and continue to sketch. When the pencil starts becoming blunt and when we have a much shorter edge like this, there's something that does not work as well as the pencil which has this long neck. Now, I was totally unaware of this technique till maybe a few years ago. And there's a wonderful Pune artist who works a lot with pencil sketching, and he's had workshops in pencil sketching, where I think the first half day of his workshop, he only teaches you how to sharpen your pencils like this. There must be some very great technique, but I haven't attended it yet, and I kind of fumbled through through this part of sharpening the pencil. But I do see certain advantages. So the advantages that I have noticed in this technique is that you need to be aware of these very subtle movements that can change your picture. Like if I were to change the darkness over here because there is a cast shadow on this side, at what point do I turn this nose around? I can get better accuracy because I can see it better versus somewhere over here. The little bit of space that the pencil uses up, I can't see it better. That's the only thing that I can think of that might be a good reason. Subsequently, I have seen quite a few artists on the net who also do academic level of pencil sketching, and all of them tend to sharpen their pencils to an extreme and long point. Sometimes the tip can go up to 1.5 inches or even more longer. So here I can achieve more subtle shades by going over and over with light pressure. A fellow's face still looks like a girl's face. Okay, I'm going to fuzz up the edge of the mouth a little bit. Wherever you can see a line that is indicative of a direction when you're shading, like over here, do you utilize that? Now, when you come to a highlight, just leave it blank. And when you come towards the edge of the face, also build that from inside to the outside instead of first drawing a line. At this point, I could try to make the stubble, and hopefully this will start looking more manly. Now, even the stubble has character, so don't just make lines. It has these dark lines have a direction, so you should ideally make them that direction. There's some texture that it has. Okay, how's it going?
I'll take a picture and show you maybe.
Yeah, just send me a picture. See better one. I'm gonna change my angle a little now. The sun over here shines through the curtain. Yeah, I see better without extra.
I just sent it. It's still not finished.
All right, okay. Okay. Chitra, are you holding your
Yeah.
pencil far enough?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll
So,
show you. I'll show you where I'm holding it.
okay.
Oops. Okay, it's kind of somewhere here like this.
Okay. Can you show
Should I
me
hold
on
it?
paper? Any chance that you can either tilt your screen or something so I can see how, yeah, just if you can point it towards the paper.
Yeah, one second.
Okay.
I don't know whether it's
Yeah.
gone to my paper or not.
No, now it has.
Okay.
And, okay. And pull your paper closer because now I can't see the contact. No, not closer here, closer to you, because I just want to see with the contact of the pencil to paper, where you're sketching, I want to be able to see it. Yeah. Okay. This looks okay.
All right.
So I see a limited number of directions, excuse me,
Yeah.
in how you're shaping.
Uh-huh.
So I can see vertical and I can see this 45-degree angle. So it's vertical, 45-degree. Again,
Yeah.
the mouth, it's vertical and 45-degree towards the edge. What I
Yes.
want you to try to do is shade with both these also is fine, but
Mm-hmm.
in such a manner that the lines are not visible. So
Okay.
I'll
Let's
just
do.
show you how you can do this. Yeah. So when we are shading like this, if your pencil is being lifted, then you get lines. This.
Yes.
Okay. And this
Hmm.
is also fine. But if we want a really fine sketch, then we
Hmm.
need to avoid making lines, which
Yes.
means that when your pencil, even if your pencil is moving in a manner that you're making lines, those lines need to be very close to each other. So you don't roll the pencil. And initially, you will get a few lines. So your pencil must move, the lines that you make must be closer to each other. And as you proceed, after about 15-20 of these lines, that edge of the pencil starts becoming blunt. And then you
Yeah.
overlap lines because they start becoming thicker. You overlap one after the other, and you start getting a smoother finish.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, if you
Hmm.
want to increase depth, so this is lines, lines without lines. If you want to increase depth, you do the same thing, but you increase, you can increase pressure. So I'm going to try and do that.
Hmm.
That's one way.
Yeah.
But you can also change and layer. So the same two angles that you're using this 45-degree slanted angle and the
Hmm.
upright angle.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing upright as well. Now, when you make it upright, more often than not, you don't get that smooth start. So you might have to
Hmm.
practice that a little bit, but you
Yeah.
overlay in such a way that you start getting a darker edge with the same
Right.
amount of pressure.
Hmm.
And then in certain areas, you can increase pressure,
Hmm.
keep doing this, and then once in a while, also change the angle and just rub the pencil
Hmm. Hmm.
to
Hmm.
the paper.
Right.
Like when you're making like Ayurvedic medication, they
Mm-hmm.
what is it called? उगाळणं म्हणतात ना?
हाँ हाँ कळलं मला. Yes.
So you have to just rub this on the
Yes, yes.
and deposit graphite onto paper. So you go to
Right.
the areas where you see that the graphite has not laid itself properly, and then
Hmm.
with very gentle pressure, you start filling in. That
Right.
way, you get in some places where you want the line, you get the line. But in
Hmm.
other places where you want it to be smooth, it starts becoming
Hmm.
smoother, like in the case of this mouth, for example.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
So I think you can, since it is not finished yet, you will be able
Hmm.
to do it. well enough.
Okay.
Try that.
Okay. Okay.
We'll try another nose and mouth. This time, maybe the one facing in front. Now, this one can be very ugly because I think she's looking up and her nostrils are very prominent.
I'm sorry, I didn't do. Which one are we using?
I think you still have some way to go. So continue on this one. Don't go for
Oh,
the
okay, okay, okay.
yeah. I'm just moving on so I can get more samples done so that when
Ah,
you're practicing, you can you have some reference. Okay,
okay,
I'm
okay.
making this one now. So we finished looking left, looking right,
Huh,
and looking center with mouth open.
okay.
But don't rush yourselves. We
Huh.
will be continuing this even next week. Next week we will do full face. So just focus on this right now.
Next week, I will not be able to attend any class. I mean, not even in any of the other batches because
Oh,
I'm fully traveling.
oh, okay, okay.
So I'll have to, I think, do it from the video.
No, then we will push the class. The next week we can all take an off and we can do the class in June. I think in June we have 5 weeks any case, so it'll be compensated.
Mhm.
Let me
Okay.
should be
Yeah,
the
I mean, if
4th of
that
June.
works, fine.
No, no,
Otherwise,
not in June. But yeah, we don't have 5 weeks. 26th, no? 26th, you're not in town?
yeah, I'm not in town. And I'm not in town that starting like this
Huh.
tomorrow morning. So
Okay. Yeah, June,
I'm
June we
traveling.
have 5 weeks. So we can take up one extra week for portrait. That'll
Okay.
be on the second. I was going to take that day off, really. I'm giving the other batches, 29th and 30th, I'm giving them an off because it's the 5th week. Thursday, I don't have any classes. So I was hoping for the second, but it's okay. 4 days is enough for me. So we'll do the abstract portrait on Friday, the 2nd June. And next week we can take an off.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool.
Mhm.
I'm trying to marketing for people who can join,
Oh,
but
you are? Okay.
I'm trying, but most of them are like quite busy. They keep asking me.
Huh.
Then there is a very good tutor. We have to join her
Huh.
classes. I was trying to check. Maybe I'll again check with anyone who were asking. There are a few girls from US.
Huh. So, we could do is instead of an ongoing class, we could do a 3 month thing.
Mhm.
Anytime when they think they have 3 months free, we can just do a 12-week session for your batch and cover floral and food and the usual basic stuff. And then they can leave after that. So at least for 3 months we can start them out. It works pretty well. There's another in Pune, I've done that for a place where it was pretty far away from the city. I used to go once a week. And I just did it for 12 weeks. And there were a lot of people who came for 12 weeks, but then they could not continue. Then they dropped off, and then the ones who could continue stayed on, and we had that class for almost 2 years till the pandemic.
Mm.
Or, Archana, we could just do a weekend workshop
Okay.
for those who are interested. We could try with just that. And I could also then share it with my other cousins in the US, and then from there we can build up.
Let me check. Yeah.
Next year, we are planning a trip to the US and Canada, but just in Vancouver. How far is Vancouver from your place, Archana? It's pretty far, right?
It's pretty far, but where in Vancouver? I can try to travel.
There's a wedding, I don't know where, but they still haven't decided. So they just know the date so that people can plan. It's a friend's son's wedding. So we will be there early June
Next year.
next year, yeah.
Okay. Exactly 1 year.
I'll let you know definitely. You must come. We'll at least spend one day. We'll do some urban sketching or something. And by the
Yeah.
time that there are
Nice.
more people, then we can do a Vancouver urban sketching workshop.
Ooh, sounds nice.
Days will be pretty good, the climate and temperature by this time. Yeah.
I know, like, good. That's what I'm hoping.
You don't feel that cold.
So this pair of lips, because it is so light, you might have to shade very lightly. Don't make it too dark at all. Just practice the light color, the light tone. And then wherever needed, the same pressure, minimal pressure, you can try changing the direction, but the pressure remains the same. And even over here, there's a light pressure line on teeth. Now, this shading on the teeth is something that even I didn't know. And I would also wonder, why are my teeth looking like they're stuck?
Hmm.
And they really stick out and look very artificial. And then I realized that in our heads, we see the teeth as white, but they too are susceptible to shadows. No, they're not like fluorescent, they're not shining. And when we draw teeth, we often make them bereft of any color. And they do look like they are sticking out and shining so much because that's how they are. They are shining. There isn't even a little bit of shadow on them. How are they going to look natural? So this came to me once when, a couple of times really. Sometimes what looks like white is actually a shade of gray or blue, but in the context that you see it, it looks white and bright. You must have seen some of those curious images where they will take a square and they'll place it over here and over here, and they'll say this is the same color. One patch of gray is against, I'll show it to you since you all are still sketching. Okay, I've shared this. And I'm also sharing how the comparison looks. Okay, here we have these two images, black and white, or gray top and white bottom. And because of the background color and because of this shaded area, these two colors look like they belong to two different shades, right? This one looks like it's gray and this one looks like it's white. It's supposed to
Yeah.
be white. And it looks white in our heads,
Yes.
but it's actually a gray, right? It's a gray color. And so is this. And to prove that it's the same color, you can take a patch from the top and take a patch from the bottom, and you'll notice that it's the same color. But because it the top has a dark shadow at the bottom and the bottom section has a white highlight on top, it changes the identity of the object. But visually, it is the same gray.
My God.
So this is how we see with our eyes and see with our brain.
Amazing, huh?
It is.
My God. Yeah.
So this was one thing that I noticed. And so every time you are in doubt about what color or shade a particular object is, if you have a digital software with which you can isolate or pixelate a color and go straight into it and then check its color combination, oftentimes you realize that whatever looks white is not white, it's a shade of gray. Then there was a time when I was doing a module on caricatures and cartoons for kids. And I often use reference images from the net for cartoons because I'm not very familiar with cartoons and I'm not as good at caricature as I would have liked to be. That's something that I have to learn for myself. But there were a few hints on how to draw expressive eyes and nose and mouth. And what my module entailed was to teach children, again, like I'm showing you, how to draw the various parts and then put them together and make a face out of that. Or then if you can make a face on anything else that, especially something that is that does not usually have a face, then it becomes an exercise in creative thinking. So, in fact, one of the exercises that the kids really enjoyed during that session was I would get them to make these googly eyes on paper, and I would ask them to paste them on jars in the fridge, facing the door. So imagine you have something like this. You would have this was one of the eye shapes that we had studied. So all they had to do was to draw this, cut this up, and go and paste it on a jar in the fridge. And then when somebody opens the fridge, they they get such a start because
Yeah.
suddenly the ketchup is looking at them very angrily. It was very funny. And some kids, of course, did it. But anyway, at that time, what I saw was when they made, say, teeth, for example. The teeth were again made like this. There was just a silhouette. They didn't draw each individual teeth, unless, of course, they wanted to make the person look either psychotic or person with bad teeth. So here it's fine because it's a cartoon. But this cartoon itself also gets elevated when you follow through with a gentle shadow on the teeth on top and the bottom. Just that little bit gives even this cartoon face also starts looking a little softer. You can do the same thing with the eyes. A little bit of shadow over here makes the eyes look rounder. It's quite subtle. Then the bottom teeth in this example are fairly gray. They're not white at all. So if you keep them white, the mouth will look more open than it is. And when you're making freckles, just rub the pencil in a zone back and forth or in a circle, and don't make the freckle like a dot. At any point, if you feel stuck and you don't know if you're unhappy or uh, confused about how to proceed, just take a walk. Just go away from your picture and then come back after 10-15 minutes, and you will see it in a new light. And then reevaluate. Don't go back to the place where you had a problem. Go to whichever area you can find something you can do. Sometimes making a portrait is like how I assume they would fight wars. that you don't always attack from one section. You should be prepared to take different solutions, attack the enemy from different solutions. So that's what we have to try. Now, also, another thing that I wanted to share is while we do all this fine shading and whatnot, please also try to do the rough illustration, rough line illustration like this. It's just as valuable. And maybe you could do it such that you don't have to spend too much time on it. But learning to see faces or objects in shapes like these is quite a valuable asset.
Okay.
So this becomes like a route exploration from where you can take this in different directions. You can make abstract illustrations or abstract paintings with this. You can study, you can take this further and make it as a part of another illustration or a painting. So don't forget to enjoy this part as well. And also it can be done much quicker. So you can do more sketches with this. And yeah, most valuable is that your hand starts moving a certain predictable way, which is finally the reason why we practice art, so that the one day you want the line to do exactly what it should do, make very subtle movements and give you the subtle shapes that you need. It knows how to do it. And that unfortunately only comes from, or best, not only, comes best when you are in the practice of making sketches like these. Now again over here, the smiling mouth. You're tempted to make the shape of the teeth because there are so many and we can see every shape, but resist that and do this. You can start from the center and just draw the bottom edge. And spend some time drawing these very carefully, at least up to the canines. Then you can draw a line because the remaining teeth are behind this and they are overlapped by the canines. The teeth do not go all the way to the end. We have some flesh over there. And that's not gums. And in this case also, you can draw the gums. But remember how the angle is. I mean, pay attention to the angles when you're drawing. Okay.
Yeah.
Any comments, any queries, doubts?
So Aditi, we
Yeah.
we have drawn nose, ear, nose, mouth, and eyes. So
Yeah.
I figure out that combination of everything of a full face is something which I lose the proportion of it. So do we have any class where we have full face sketching?
Yeah, we'll do it next time. I was supposed to do it next week. But
Okay.
we'll do it on the 2nd of June because we have 5 classes in that month.
Okay, no problem. We can do that.
The whole point of breaking the face up and practicing all these was so that um, one is proportion, but one is also just being able to draw that feature confidently, whether it's the eyes, the nose, or mouth, or whatever. When we don't see those shapes for how they are, when we try drawing them as a face, nothing comes right. You don't get the right shapes to start with. So this, especially the last part, the making the sketchy lines that I told you about, that is the exercise that you need to start with. Forget the shading, forget the fine detailing, get those lines in the right place. Once you start seeing them, seeing your picture just in terms of lines, and your hand starts moving very easily, then you can see distances by drawing those sketchy lines in between the eyes and nose and mouth, and see gauge distances a lot better also. So then putting together a face becomes quite, I think it doesn't become easy, it becomes a little less frustrating. Because in the beginning, it's just so annoying that you're trying to make a line. You keep trying it, and you don't even realize what is going wrong. Because this is like the same difference. What you see in your head versus what is actually in front of your eyes are two different things altogether. So that is the thing that we need to work on. Being able to draw exactly what you see, being able to distill through all the shading and the color and see only the pertinent lines is another part of the training. And the third part is the hand should just be able to move. You may be able to see everything great, but building muscle strength to be able to draw that, that's the third thing. And when I used to do this, of course, this was when I was 15, I was just trying this out with no instruction or anybody guiding me. I remember that the trepidation, I think I must have hyperventilated myself to almost passing out, because the more you are into your sketch, the more invested you are in, and you think that this is it. If I don't get the lips right, I'm doomed. And it would often happen. I would misgauge the distance between nose and mouth and chin, because there's no feature over here. You just have to gauge it through proportions of previous features. And I would always get that wrong. I would always have like a Habsburg chin on most of my faces. But later on, when I started teaching, I learned myself also. I started figuring out what might be going wrong and how we can address it. So uh, I was trying, at that time, I was trying to see, interpret, and draw all three together. And it was very much a shot in the dark. I wasn't aware that you saw differently with your eyes and interpreted it differently in your brain. And then, of course, I hadn't drawn too much before. So though I had a steady enough hand, it wasn't as good as is required to make a portrait. I could do everything else very easy. So it almost seemed as if, why am I not getting portraits right? And simply because the subject is too close to us from an evolutionary point of view. So we cannot mess up. A single line or a small centimeter, millimeter difference changes faces completely. And we are aware of it without even knowing that our brain is equipped for that kind of change. That's why portraiture can be equally rewarding, and the process can be equally frustrating. So in the hierarchy of illustration, portraits get a very high status. Then comes landscape, and the last comes still life. So if you're a portrait artist, you are you're up there. And more than that, then if you are a devotional artist. So people like Michelangelo, who painted scenes with humans, but imagining biblical locations and characters, were considered even higher. Okay, so I guess that's it for today. Next week we won't have class then, and we'll have class directly on the 2nd of June, but we will do abstract portraiture and full face next week, that time,
Okay,
2nd June.
sure.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Aditi. Bye, Archana.